What's your typical INFJ friend like? Well, you may be disappointed to hear, or surprised to hear, or frustrated to hear that there's no typical INFJ friend. There's a lot of people in the community who fantasize a little bit about INFJ. It will often be seen online, for example, I mean most of the time online, but that's very revealing, that people say things like, I want to be friends with an INFJ, I'm so fascinated by them, so how can I be friends with an INFJ? And of course, when people ask themselves that question, they forget to ask themselves, why do they want to be friends with INFJs? Are they authentically interested in being friends with INFJs, or are they just trying to seek a certain kind of gratification? The gratification of their fascination, the gratification of their, in a sense, probably their desire to be made more unique by the projection of the image of having a unique person as a friend. But even that notion of being friends with a unique person that is an INFJ is a projection and is a construction, partly because INFJs are not that rare ultimately. I mean, they're certainly among the rarest types, but there's still millions of INFJs around the world, you know? It's more rare to have, far more rare to have heterochromia in your eyes than to be an INFJ, right? But in any case, I think there's three ways that you can be friends with an INFJ if you really want to be, and I should say if it happens to you, because you should not force it, of course. The most common friend, the most common INFJ friend is like intelligent. You can tell straight away they're intelligent, a little bit low in self-confidence, socially not super comfortable, especially when there's big crowds, more comfortable when you are talking to them, you know, one-to-one, or maybe as part of a small group where maybe a third person is also known to the INFJ. They tend to be hesitant about expressing their inmost thoughts. You can sense that they have a rich imaginative life, very rich imaginative life. You have an intuition that their imaginative life, their imaginary life is richer and has a denser tapestry than the imaginary lives, or of most people. And yes, you notice that they don't really share it. Now that's part of the source of fascination, because you're seeking, or at least people who are obsessed with the idea, fixated on the idea of being friends with INFJs, they think that INFJs are mysterious because they're not sharing that. I mean, it's partly true that they're not sharing it on purpose, but it's usually due to a lack of comfort socially with people they don't really know, and often, it has to be said, a lack of self-confidence. The frustration can happen when you realize in one-to-one the INFJ might not be able to articulate this vision that you're convinced they have, because articulation of vision runs into the obstacles of transparent self-expression, which NI is not very good at doing. Its language is not transparent. I've made this point in many videos. So this friend will typically be keen to pacify you to the extent that they, that they like you and that they value your companionship. They will accept, sometimes begrudgingly, to attend certain social events, do things that you sense maybe that wouldn't do if you were not asking them to, but they will occasionally, do that for you because they don't want conflict and they want to preserve the relationship. But they will also often come up with excuses, right? But they won't say it straight to your face, I don't want to do this. They'll feel guilty at some level about not joining certain events that you want them to attend. They do feel guilty. They do feel a bit anxious. But ultimately, they still come up with excuses because they cannot really cope with it. Now, this I think is the most common INFJ friend, and it certainly fits very well the categorization of the adaptive submissive INFJ. Okay, one of the three subtypes that I've sketched in my latest book. They are fascinating to other people, which is interesting because, again, they project this sense of mystery. People do notice. That's the irony. These INFJs don't want to stand out. But there's always going to be people who notice that they do stand out, because some people are highly intuitive, and I think one of the keys to managing to move to another mode of interaction with the world for these INFJs is to give a chance to those people who have the correct kind of intuition and connect with them. The second kind of INFJ who might be your friend is not very likely to be your friend, but it may happen, particularly if they value you highly in terms of your moral worth, in terms of your imaginative worth, and in terms of your intellectual worth. This INFJ is also going to find a lot of excuses. Let me rephrase this. This kind of INFJ friend is going to, similarly not want to be involved in too many social events with you. They'll much prefer one-to-one. Sometimes even a group of 3 might be too much, but might suffice in certain specific conditions. The difference with the first kind of friend is that this INFJ doesn't really feel as much guilt about not engaging with you in all the ways you would like to. They don't feel guilty about the possibility of disappointing you, at least nowhere near as much as the first one. They tend to be quite withdrawn. Even if they see you as a friend, sometimes you may feel maybe a little bit undervalued by them because they're not really good at keeping in touch. And if you understand them well, you'll notice that they tend to be quite absorbed in their NI. So you might not realize this is NI, but you know that they spend a lot of time thinking by themselves. They tend to be sometimes a little bit pessimistic, usually not quite nihilistic, but pessimistic about the human condition and other people. They don't have high expectations of other people, and they're very selective about their friends. So if you're a friend of that kind of INFJ, sometimes you may feel a certain kind of covert pride that they chose you as a friend. This, of course, is a solipsist, the solipsistic INFJ, who is another mode of interaction with the world that characterizes the INFJ, also sketched in my book, The Infinite Soul. And the last kind of INFJ is the rarest, although funny enough, I think a lot of people think that this is the typical kind of INFJ. I mean, not all the time, but certainly people assume it's more common than it really is. And that's the INFJ friend who is quietly charismatic, a moral leader, the INFJ that when you interact with them, you feel at peace, you feel understood, you feel calm, you feel peaceful, you feel inspired philosophically, existentially. You feel enriched, not just in terms of intellect, but also in terms of your soul, right? So it's almost like this kind of INFJ is maybe the archetype would be something like the Buddha or Jesus, right? This is the spiritualized INFJ, which is the third mode of interaction with the world, the highest in many ways that you may encounter. And having that person as a friend is incredibly enriching, and you should certainly treasure that possibility if it shows up. It's certainly possible. I'd like to explore that more in future work, including books. If being in the vicinity of a spiritualized INFJ increases through identification or through introjection or through other forms of interaction, social interaction and psychic interaction, increases in turn the likelihood that you, if you are an INFJ, in this case you'd have to be an INFJ yourself, might, sort of accelerate your progression towards spiritualization and liberation. Now, if you want to hear more about all these different subtypes of INFJs and friendship and love and laughter, you should really check out my latest book on the INFJ, which is called The Infinite Soul, INFJ Life in the Modern World, which looks at how INFJs interact with external reality, a world that is often described as harrowing and difficult for INFJs. It explores the different subtypes, like I said, goes more in depth in this video and other videos, talks about how INFJs could find meaning, purpose, and value in this world. And it has a prequel, which you may be familiar with. It's kind of a best-selling book at this point. If you haven't got it, get it. The Ecstatic Soul, a new look at the INFJ personality. It looks at the content of the INFJ mind, INFJ consciousness, how it manifests in terms of feeling states, phenomenology, and existential constitution. Okay, check the reviews. Review The Infinite Soul if you loved it but haven't reviewed it yet, because it really helps with the referencing, please. And don't forget, the lifeblood of my channel is my Patreon page. This channel is still going thanks to your support. And if you would kindly consider it, the link is below to my Patreon page. You can interact with me there, suggest new content. You get access to bonus content, including Patreon-only videos. So consider it. I thank you very much, and I'll see you next time, guys. Bye-bye.